In this video, we'll enhance both how the player moves and its visual appearance. Our objectives will be to modify the speed of the ball, adjust the look of the ball through its material, and add a trail renderer to the ball to create an interesting visual effect. Now, the roller ball is a Unity standard asset that, of course, we imported with the characters standard asset package. And this made it easy for us to get a character, or a ball in this case, up and running very quickly. And of course, the roller ball has a variety of components attached. One of the most important components beyond the physics components that we've already talked about is the ball script. So let's play around with the ball script a little bit. You can see here we've got a variety of settings here in the inspector for this script, including the move power that controls how fast the ball moves, this use torque option, which defines if torque influences the movement of the ball. We've got a max angular velocity and a jump power. So first off, I don't want to be able to jump in my game, so I'm going to change the jump power to 0. So by setting it to 0, my player will no longer be able to jump. The next thing that I want to do is I want to tighten up the controls a little bit. By having the use torque option selected, the torque of the ball actually influences the motion. And I think it makes the control of the ball a little bit sloppy as I was testing. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off use torque. And then let me go ahead and play and see what I've got. So I'm moving around. I seem to be pretty sluggish now, so I need to increase that move power. So I'm in play mode, and while I'm in play mode, I can actually make changes. They just don't persist after I exit. So for example, let me go up to something like 50 for move power and hit return. And you can see I'm moving very fast now, maybe a little bit too fast. And of course I fell off the world here, so I got to stop to get my ball back up there. And of course when I stop, I reset back to the original 5. So we can use play mode to do some testing. So while I'm playing, once again, I'm sluggish. Let's say I go to something like 25. Hit return. If you are using keyboard controls, you have to click back into the game view to get your focus back there. But if you're using a controller, you don't have to do that. So here at 25, this feels about right to me. It may be personal preference, and in the game that you ultimately build, you might have to go back and adjust the numbers here. But I like the 25 mark. So let me go ahead and stop playing here. It goes back to 5, and then I would need to in edit mode, go ahead and change that to 25 once again and make sure that that then persists. So now that we got the ball moving the way we want it, let's go ahead and change the look of the ball a little bit. So first off, notice that the roller ball has this rollerball gray shader on it. And of course, the shader is actually set through the material, which is on the mesh renderer up here. So I can click on this rollerball gray option here under materials, and that will show the standard asset material that was brought in with the rollerball gray. And I want to change that. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that. So I can go up to Edit and choose Duplicate, or Command D or Control D, depending on if you're on Windows or Mac. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this to my rollerball material. And I'm going to move that out of the standard assets materials folder up into my materials folder. So I'll just drag and drop it up there. And go ahead and close the standard assets to get those out of the way. So we've created this rollerball material now, but it's not actually applied to the rollerball. If we go back to the rollerball, notice that it still has the rollerball gray material. So I need to apply that rollerball material to the rollerball. And of course, there's many ways to do that. One simple way is you can actually drag the material and drop it right on the rollerball itself. And notice when I did that here in the inspector for the rollerball, you can see now it says rollerball material rather than that rollerball gray material. So let's go ahead and now edit some of the properties of that rollerball material. You can see this material in the inspector. It doesn't have any textures applied for the albedo, for example. Everything is done through tinting. So for example, I can just click on the little color swatch here and bring up my color picker and then specify a color. And you can see as I move the colors, the ball changes. And of course, you can also set your colors down here. I'm going to set a hex color that I've predefined. You can make this whatever color you want, but if you want to follow along and make it look exactly like mine, I'm going to use the hex color of 0056FF. And then you can put another FF to define the transparency. So that's the albedo color. Let me go ahead and choose a specular color as well. So I'll click on the color swatch by specular. And once again, the color picker will come up, and I'll set this one to 00FFFF to kind of create an aqua looking color. Notice that time when I hit return, it added the final two F's because it's taking that from the alpha information here. So 255 is no transparency. And once again, you can tweak this however you want. That's what I want for now. So let me go ahead and close that. And now my ball looks a little bit different. And the other thing I want to do is I want to add a trail renderer to the ball just to make the game a little bit more lively, have a little bit more pizzazz. So to add a trail renderer, I just need to add a component to the rollerball. So a trail renderer is actually a built-in component. So let me select the rollerball and go down to Add Component. And the trail renderer is under Effects. So let me choose Effects and Trail Renderer. And that will add the trail renderer component. Now I can do that in multiple ways, of course. I could select the rollerball and also choose the components under the component menu at the top. So I can go to Component, Effects, Trail Renderer, for example. And that'll do the same thing. Now the trail renderer component has many different options. Before I change any of them, let me go ahead and just press play and see what that did. So you can see I actually have a trail renderer here. It's kind of this weird pink color. But you can see, you know, there is a path here, and eventually you can see it disappear. So let me go ahead and stop that. So one of the most important properties of the trail renderer is the material that renders the trail. So let's go ahead and create a new material for this. So I'm going to go into my Projects tab and select Materials. And by selecting the Materials folder, when I choose Create, it will then automatically create it within that folder, of course. So let me go ahead and choose Create. Go down to Material, and I'm going to call this my trail material. And these are just the standard options here. I want to change my shader from standard to particles, and then choose alpha blended. And of course you can play with different shaders to see what effects they might have. So I want to change my tint color. So let me go ahead and choose just a white tint color here. And I'll leave the alpha at 128, you know, sort of half opaque, half transparent. And that's all I'm going to do to that trail renderer. Let me go back to my rollerball and apply that material. So notice right now the material is set at none, and that's why we have that weird pink color. That's basically, whenever you see that weird pink color in Unity, that means probably a material is not attached to something. So here in the trail renderer, I want to attach that material to my materials, and I can go ahead and just drag and drop it right there into that material spot. And that material is now applied. So if I, without any other changes, if I go ahead and hit play, you'll see that we no longer have that pink. We have more of a white color, but it still doesn't look great. So let me go ahead and stop this and go back to the trail renderer and play with some of the different options here. So just moving down, you can see the time is set at 5. That's basically 5 seconds. The trail, you know, will continue to grow for 5 seconds and then detract. So let me go ahead and change that to be much smaller. Let me bring it down to 2 seconds. And you could adjust these how you see fit. If I go ahead and play now, you can see that the trail, you know, is much shorter than it was before. So the other thing is our trail is much too big. And you can see the width right here is set at 1. And if I change that to something like 0.5 and then play again, you can see my trail is a lot smaller, so it's half of a meter rather than a meter. But it'd be nice to kind of have my trail dissipate over time. That's what the little diagram here is representing. So for example, let me change my width back to something like 0.8, so it's a little bit bigger, but it's not an entire meter, which is the size of the ball. And then I want to adjust a curve here. So you can see the little keyframe at the beginning, and this sort of represents time here. So if I go to the very end of this and right click, I could then choose to add a key. And once I have a key there, I can actually drag this down. So if I drag it all the way down to 0, you can see the curve basically represents a transition over time from 0.8 width to 0 width over the 100% of the time. So over 2 seconds, it will have that transition. So if I go ahead and play again, we can see the effect of that. So you can see I've got a nice tapering off of that trail. Now the last thing that I want to do is actually adjust the color over time as well. So you can see the color option just below the curve. Let me go ahead and select this. And notice I don't get just the regular color picker, I get a gradient editor. So we can actually define a gradient over time. And the way this works is the bottom are colors and the top is transparency. So for example, I can choose the bottom indicator here and select that. And that will bring up our color picker that we've seen before. And I'm going to go ahead and set a starting color of 00FFEA to create a similar blue color that we've seen before. And let me go ahead and close that. And then for the final color, so this is the beginning color, and then I can go to the end here and double click on this to bring up the color picker once again. And I'm going to set the final color to 0080FF, so a darker blue color. And go ahead and close that. So I've got a transition from this color to this color, or a gradient, if you will. I also want to transition the transparency. So if I double click on the first one, you can see I start with an alpha of 255, and then if I click on the last one here, I'm going to transition down to an alpha of 50, so almost completely transparent, and you can kind of see the effect there in the preview. Of course, you're not going to see that checkered pattern. And let's go ahead and close this and test it out. So you can see now our trail behind the ball is a blue color rather than the white, and it changes color over time, and it fades out over time as well. And I think it looks pretty good. In the next video, we'll add the ability to die in the game through health and damage.